Hare Krishna. There are 5 ways of perceiving reality that we'll try to understand according to Vedas. People of Vedic culture, they were also trying to understand reality and they had different various means. Like if we see various achievement of Vedic or Indian civilization, some of which dates back 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, it includes like which are there in the ancient texts. There are which is actually relevant today also. There are remarkable achievements of the culture that thrived thousands of years. At the time, according to our modern perspective, humanity was still in the primitive stages. Say for example, the speed of light mentioned in Rig Veda, the distance to all planetary systems in and which are giving along with the description of their elliptical orbits, no, the sun, around the sun, all these things are there actually in the Vedic scriptures. It is worth noting that the Western culture, especially the elliptical planetary orbits, were first discovered in the 18th century. Now there are so many verses in Bhagavatam, the description between of Krishna and gopis are given, where the number pi is encoded with astonishing precision up to 31st or 32nd decimal places. Now there are various fields including Ayurveda, that is Vedic medicine, music, yoga, Sanskrit, no matter the discipline, each area reveals something extraordinary. And now all these achievements were made without modern tools, complex chemical laboratories or sophisticated equipment, yet the results are impressive and have been perceived through time. Now we will try to see that the people of that era, they possessed a unique of perception, which in many ways is no longer accessible to us. They have a fundamentally different way of understanding and interacting with the world. And if we speak about the goal of yoga, it is precisely this: to learn, perceive the world differently. Now what we see and understand today with our modern mind is merely a fragment of reality, a thin superficial layer. The truth in reality is far deeper. Now the Vedas suggest that there are 5 primary ways to perceive reality. The first and the most basic is called pratyaksha, which means direct sensory perception. What we see with our eyes, hear with our ears and taste with our tongue. So this is direct perception. So modern people largely rely on this form of perception to believe in something. Now however, according to Vedic philosophy, this is considered the lowest and most primitive way of knowing reality. Now the second level is called paroksha, which refers to knowledge gained through reasoning and logical inference. So when we listen, analyze and use our intelligence, our capacity for understanding, then our capacity to understanding expands beyond the limits of our senses. That means I see and I start analyzing, okay, these are the things. Now I am seeing outside water, then I can say it is raining. It might have rained 1 hour before, because I could see water outside all around on the road and everywhere. Now based on the water I can assume, so I am going something beyond, I did not see it, but beyond that I can infer some things, I can understand. So it is going beyond the limits of our senses, that is. And then that is paroksha. Then there is aparoksha. The third level is aparoksha, which refers to direct mystical perception of reality, a level that transcends the sensory and intellectual understanding. So this is the third level, where you do not see but you can directly perceive something beyond the senses. So there are also paroksha, which involves indirect knowledge, and finally aparoksha, which signifies an immediate and intuitive grasp of reality. Now yoga in essence aims to guide a person to this state of direct perception. To truly understand yoga, one must first grasp certain fundamental concepts. So yoga, grounded in the philosophy of Sankhya, teaches this consciousness. The perceiving entity is distinct from the mind and senses. Like I, the perceiver, having 2 instruments, one is mind and one are senses. So with the help of senses and mind, I, the perceiver, perceives it. So that is the soul. So this is actually what yoga says. It is not the senses who are perceiving, it is not the mind. Senses are giving information, mind is processing the information, but perception is done by the soul. They have some level of perception, but actually what is perceiving is the soul only. So it is a distinct from the mind and senses, and this perceiving particle is called Atma or the soul, also referred to as Jiva, the source of life. This philosophy asserts that life, while animating the body and utilizing the senses, is fundamentally different from matter. Like the mind serves as the primary tool for knowledge, and the material body with its sensory organs, eyes, nose, hands, etc., as an intermediary. So there are 5 active senses and 5 perceiving senses, like hands, legs, and mouth and anus and genitals are active senses, and then perceiving senses are eyes, ears, nose, skin and tongue. So all these things are the senses, and all interacting with the external world. So we interact with the external world using all these senses, right? And then however our perception is mediated through these tools, and each layer introduces limitations. That means my senses have certain limits. I cannot perceive more than certain things. Say something very far from here, I cannot see. Some people's senses or some animal senses are very strong. Like if you take an eagle, it can see for 2 to 3 miles, 4 miles also, and it is very clear in that vision. And when you take dogs, they can smell very acute things also. And same thing with hearing. Some animals, they are very good in hearing. So our senses have limitations. So that means I am interacting with this world, but because of the limitation in my senses, I am not able to perceive all the reality that is happening around. I am able to get limitation. My knowledge which I am getting my senses is limited because of the limitation of my senses, right? And our senses are inherently restricted. Our eyes can only perceive a narrow range of light waves. Our ears hear within limited frequencies, and our senses of smell is far less sensitive than that of some of animals like dogs. Now the signals from our senses are gathered by the mind. So I am acquiring all these things, giving it to mind, which processes and interprets them. Now because the information is limited, even the mind is processing properly, but the information is based on limited information. The processing is based on limited information. Yet the mind itself is not infallible. Now there is another problem. Okay, information is coming, I am processing, but there is some other problems with the mind. We will try to understand, because it modifies and filters information. Mind does not process everything as it is modifying and filtering, and introducing bias and distortions. What is the problem with mind is it is biased and distorts the information. So modern science confirms this. The image we see is not reality itself, but a process reflection on the retina, inverted and adjusted by our brain. So in yoga, the problem lies not only in the imperfection of our senses, but also in the filtering and interpreting role of the mind. So the mind does not present reality neutrally. It colors our perception based on prior experiences, emotions, and it is very biased. So now what happens, I already have certain impressions, certain experiences, certain emotions. Say now I am seeing a colorful painting. Now why I said a colorful painting, a beautiful painting, I already have some estimation of what is beautiful. That is why I say it is a beautiful painting. If I am saying, oh, this is a very nasty fellow. Now if I am saying nasty fellow, how I know it is nasty? I already have some experience of that person. That is why my processing, I am seeing a person. If say one boy is seeing a woman, immediately he recognizes, oh, my mother, and he gets a different emotion seeing. But if same woman is seen by some other boy, and he says, oh, my teacher, she is very strict, she is not very good, because she happened to be the teacher of this boy. but she happened to be mother of another boy. So both have a different understanding of the same personality. That means what? It is biased. It is based on emotion. So in essence, the yoga seeks to transcend these limitations. Now senses have limitations, mind has limitations, because mind is emotional. It is, if I am interacting with something and I am always biased. If I see food item, I am biased. I say I like, I don't like. Whether it is good or not is not a difference. What is good or not is based on my own experiences, right? So same thing with mind, it's a processing based on certain experience, emotion. So now what yoga is trying to do, it is transcending the limits of both senses and mind and trying to give a knowledge which is beyond the senses and mind. So this is actually the purpose of yoga, to see. Yoga seeks to transcend these limitations. It aims to refine our perception and quit the distortions of the mind and allow us to experience reality directly, unmeditated and unfiltered. And through yoga one can learn not only perceive but also to interact with reality in fundamentally different way. This transformation in perception is the ultimate goal of yoga, a deeper, truer understanding of the world and our place within it. Now, different people perceive reality differently, right? People, like for me the world is something, for a small child it is something, for a businessman world is something, for a politician world is something. Everybody perceives the world in a different way according to their perception. So people also hear differently. So same information everybody hears it different, and sometimes someone might not hear me, like now I am discussing something, so they are hearing, but they will not be hearing what I am speaking. They have their own understanding because their mind is processing something else. So their mind isn't where the ears are. Moreover, there are many problems in the mind. Now we will try to discuss in detail the issues within the mind and how it deliberately destroys information. So mind deliberately destroys. The mind functions like a lens. The clarity of this lens depends on how clean it is. How many spots or distortion is had, so that much the distorted the information is. Like reasonably we will try to see how this can be understood. But those who have studied psychology know that the mind is a very complex entity. The information that passes through the mind is often distorted, adopted and reshaped to fit our expectations or our preconceived notions. We say no, this is going to work like this. We have some prejudice. Oh no, this is not going to work. We have to do like this. This should be done like this only. So this is because we already have some program. As a result, the information that reaches our small venerable soul is far from objective. So that is why the Vedas discuss aparoksha jnana or knowledge of direct perception. They process an extraordinary idea. They say the soul can perceive reality directly. I told soul is given two instruments, one is senses, one is mind. Senses will give information, mind processes, but both are defective. Senses are limited and mind is biased because it already has some preconceived notions and emotions. Now the soul can directly perceive reality bypassing these two. So bypassing the distorted mechanism of the mind. This ability is responsible for many of the achievements described in the ancient texts, like the speed of light. Without any modern laboratories equipments, how could they get speed of light? Because they perceived directly with the soul. And like only a small fragment of all this is possible. Achievements which are there in the Vedic culture is direct perceptions. So these remarkable outcomes are made possible through a refined state of mind that either does not interfere with the perception or allows for a more objective understanding of reality. So we will discuss the mechanism that enables this state, but before understanding it, we have to understand the model of life from the perspective of yoga. This model is highly logical. Even researchers in artificial intelligence after the initial enthusiasm about replicating human intelligence through computers, have realized something crucial. They said a computer can mimic the mechanism process of mind, but it cannot replicate consciousness. So computer can do everything the mind does. What computer cannot do? It cannot have consciousness. It does not have its own opinion. It can give opinion which we program to it, but on its own it cannot take a stand. It says whether it is good or bad, you have to program to it and tell. But for us, we have our own way to decide whether good or bad, and today we will say good, tomorrow we will say bad, because our consciousness changed. But computer, it's not like that. Every time it will be sticking to it does not have its own opinion, because there is no soul, no consciousness. So a computer cannot experience and self awareness, emotions, or mortality. It lacks that I, the consciousness, the observer. If we are trying to break the computer or destroy it, computer will never say don't kill me, because there is no I. It is not having this consciousness, the observer. Now the philosophy of yoga identifies a profound problem. The soul, while observing, please try to understand what is the problem. The soul is given two instruments, mind and senses. But when the soul, while observing the screen of mind, begins to identify with the mind. So according to yoga, life is like a movie. We don't see reality directly. We see a filtered, simplified reflection of it on the screen of our mind, because reality itself is far deeper and more astonishing. If we merely observe the mental screen, it wouldn't be such a big issue. The real problem arises when we start believing that we are mind. So when I am observing this mind which is given to me, I am starting identifying myself with the mind. Say I am watching a movie, I start identifying with the character, with the protagonist of the movie, and I think, oh, something is happening to him, it is happening to me. That's how I feel emotional when something happens to the protagonist of the movie. That's how. Now naturally, because the mind is influenced by the body, we began identifying ourselves with the body as well. So these layers of identification expand, entangling us further. So we have all experienced this. So when we watch a movie, 2 hours can pass unnoticed, because we become completely absorbed in the story. We forget the screen itself and focus only on the unfolding events. Similarly, in life, we identify with the stories projected on our mental screen. So like now I am watching a movie, I don't see the screen. I am so much absorbed in the movie, I don't see that, okay, it is screen, some lights are going on the screen. Nothing is happening as such. It is just lights on the screen. But we take something literally happening and we feel emotional for it. If some incident happens, people start crying and feeling fearful, feeling tensed. All these things is because they feel something is happening there. As such, some lights are going on, that's all, nothing is happening. We take it seriously, we don't see the screen, we see the movie. Similarly, there are so many things that are projected on a mental screen, and we rejoice in pleasant moments and suffer in painful ones, as though we are the main character in an endless drama. But the movie ends eventually and we wake up from the illusion in life. But when movie ends, then we wake up. But in reality, what we are going through, the movie runs 24 hours a day, and we become so deeply entangled in these mental projections that we lost sight of true self only. Because whole day I am observing myself, this movie is going on, I get so much absorbed in my mind and my body that I cannot see reality. Like sometimes movie goes absorbed in a person absorbed in a film. We depend entirely on what happens in the story. If good things happen, we are happy. If bad things happen, we are distressed. Now the problem is not the screen or the events, but the identification with them, right? It's not the movie, I am identifying. So in reality, I is free, the spirit is free and capable of directly perceiving reality. This is a far more thrilling and liberating experience. So the ancient yogis discovered this truth thousands of years ago, and dedicating their life to mastering their minds and freeing themselves from their illusion. Now, while physical health and mental clarity are impressive byproducts of yoga, they are just the beginning. The ultimate goal of yoga is liberation, freedom from the soul from false identification and distorted perception. Now, to achieve this, yoga must first cleanse what? It should cleanse the mind and refine the mind, making it clear, objective and balanced. The body too must be brought into harmony, but above all, the focus remains on the mind. In the upcoming like how it happens, we will try to discuss more. Now, the mechanism behind this transformation, understanding this model, because without which we cannot grasp the truth. So, purpose of yoga or its ultimate goal, the complete liberation of the soul. Like we are currently very limited in our experience, like we are imprisoned within our bodies, we cannot perceive anything beyond our physical senses, and our communication with the world is restricted to the small window of these senses, right. Within these senses only I can see whatever is happening. Now, this is the profound limitation. Now, if we truly consider what is happening with our bodies, we must realize that the extraordinary nature of our inner experience. So, according to the philosophy of the Vedas and the teachings of realized yogis, the soul by its nature is eternal, full of knowledge, bliss. However, we have become hostage of the bodies which are inherently mortal. So, we are caught up with these bodies and constantly subjected to suffering and filled with ignorance. Now, due to these limitations, we completely identify ourselves with this flawed and distorted system, depriving ourselves of much greater reality. The greatest tragedy is that we are conscious beings, forgot our true nature. We identify entirely with this mind and senses. That is the greatest tragedy, entirely with the images projected on the screen of our mind through our bodies and senses. So, this is a initial understanding to help us understand something deeper. So, now the method of yoga is both simple and profound, because yoga teaches us to recognize the screen on which the images of our experience are projected. So, just as in the cinema we focus on the movie and fail to notice the screen itself. Now, to perceive the screen or reality, it is necessary for the lights to get on. The projector should be off and lights on, then we see the screen, we come to reality, right. So, similarly, and allowing us to see beyond the shadows, this marks the initial stage of yoga. But what happens when the lights go out and we step out of this captivative and illusion? We began to see reality. Reality by definition is far rich and more vibrant, and then the pale reflection we perceive on the screen, the images which come onto the mind through the senses, the information, so which the soul is perceiving, you can directly perceive. So, the images on the screen can be captivating, but ultimately they are illusion, because it is not processing properly. Limited senses, programmed mind. So, many people trade real life for these illusions. Say for instance, people today often fall into digital dependency, spending their lives immersed in the illusory world of computers. However, those who began their yoga journey must understand this fundamental premise. What is that? The direct perception of reality is far more beautiful. Reality is far more free, far more free from, and making us free from suffering, free from problems, free from fear of death. So, as long as we identify ourselves with this physical machine, we will remain tormented by fear and suffering. So, this is preliminarily a main thing to understand. Now, to explain how yoga addresses this profound problem, at the same time we will also understand the most important form of yoga, which is very practical. So, yoga is an expensive and diverse discipline, and we will discuss various methods. Despite their differences, they all aim to solve the same core problem. So in Yoga Sutras, Patanjali Muni defines yoga with the phrase Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Nirodha means cessation or settling the chitta. Chitta refers to the its fluctuations or waves of mind. So that is what we can say. Now this will be the focus, where we have to focus on how to make this chitta free. Chitta can be understood as the disturbances on the surface of the mind. So these are the agitations, emotions, and through that ripples across our consciousness. So we will try to understand the source of these disturbances first. So when explaining the yoga system, Patanjali did not invent these teachings, we should also know. He only systematized the ancient knowledge he lived because approximately some 2500 years ago. So, or maybe before that also. So yoga existed long back, but Patanjali, what he did, he provided a structured framework for understanding it. So Patanjali identifies the key issues. He says that we perceive the world through the mind, but the mind itself is an imperfect instrument. It is constantly agitated. So when we are sad, angry or offended, our perception of reality becomes distorted. Because I am sad, I look the world differently. When I am happy, I look the world differently. So it is distorted. So likewise, when we are joyful, the world seems painted in brighter colors. In both cases, however, we fail to see the reality as truly, right? That's why Patanjali teaches that within the depths of our mind lies a treasure. The mind is often compared to the surface of an ocean. Beneath the turbulence, waves are pearls, treasures, and profound resources. We remain distracted by the foam only, or debris that are on the surface, and superficial disturbances on the surface. Most people only interact with the surface layer of the mind, consuming with whatever floats there. The mental plankton of fleeting thoughts and emotions, but yoga teaches us to dive deeper beyond the disturbances to cross the treasures hidden in the depth of our consciousness. So this is the essence of yoga, to still the waves of mind and experience the eternal blissful reality that lies within. So this is actually the purpose. So we practice, and the best yoga is mantra meditation. So when we sit, when we meditate, we reduce these vibrations, we focus on the eternal reality, and in that way we can achieve the perfection. So the best and the most easiest way is mantra meditation to calm the mind and free us from these vibrations. So what we discussed today is that how we are cheated by our senses and mind in perceiving reality, but reality can be perceived directly by the soul, and the method is to calm the mind so that we can go beyond this perception and reach it. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.